Hello. Today Microsoft released the Antonov 225 into the marketplace in Microsoft Flight Simulator. It's been built by Builds and licensed by Microsoft to sell, and all proceeds from it are going towards a relief effort for Ukraine, because obviously Antonov is a Ukrainian company. And famously the Antonov 225, there was only one in existence. It was destroyed by the Russian forces when they invaded Ukraine. Okay, so what can we say about this airplane other than it's absolutely gigantic? If you compare it to things like the Airbus parked over there, it's just huge, I think is the only term that really comes to mind. I mean, you just see the people walking around it. They are absolutely dwarfed by it. It has 6 engines and it can carry in the region of 600 tons. So I think it's on record, it's certainly the largest transport aircraft ever built. I think there is an aircraft now with a bigger wingspan that's been built by Scaled Composites. They're kind of their satellite launch vehicle aircraft. Anyway, let's go and have a look at it. So if we go and jump inside. So it's built by Builds, as I said, so you kind of know what's coming, that it's wonderful. So the level of modelling throughout this is absolutely fantastic, and an awful lot of it is functional. So obviously, you know, not everything is functional, but an awful lot of it is. But therein lies the issue. If you look at this cockpit, there's 6 seats. There's one of you to control it, so how on earth are you going to keep on top of everything? So I'll hope you'll excuse me today. I'm going to cheat to start the aircraft up. I'm going to press Control E, which works wonderfully. But I have been looking around the start procedures, and I've worked through it a couple of times and managed to get the aircraft up and running. So that is mostly due to it having very, very good lists of things to check, and they are all highlighted with, you know, where the switches are, and they light up. So the second challenge you will have, other than the volume of work, is everything is obviously in Cyrillic because it's from the Ukraine. So it's not the Latin alphabet at all. Although some switches do have the Latin alphabet on them, particularly at the front of the aircraft, most of them don't. So I have been looking at Google Translate just to confirm what certain words mean, and I've learnt words like auto and open and on and off, things like that. So it's going to be fun. I'm not sure I'll be able to do a written checklist for this one because of that issue, unless it's absolutely laced with photographs. Anyway, let's go and jump in the airplane. We'll press Control and E, and you'll see the whole thing bursts into life. And the engine warnings are coming to life all over the place. The APUs will be coming up, and then the engines, and the whole thing will burst into life slowly. So if we have a look around, all of the dials in the back work, all of the meters and everything, so it's stunning. So while the engines and everything are coming up, we'll have a look over on the navigation station. So this is nav radio number 1. We're going to change it to be 110.500, which is the ILS frequency for Stansted. We are at Stansted Airport, by the way. And we're going to change the course for unit number 1 to 222 degrees. Okay. So now you can see the status has come up there of the radio beacon that's being broadcast by the station. That's absolutely fine. So the next thing we'll do is go and jump in the cockpit, and we'll have a look down here. So these are the modes in which the HSI can operate. And if you notice, there's captain landing mode, nav mode, VOR1, VOR2. If we use land mode, it will use that frequency and behave for an ILS. So suddenly we have the HSI with the CDI needle, and we've got the glide slope marker in operation. Okay, and you can see we've got 222 degrees marked in as well. So we are going to fly a pretty much manual circuit at Stansted. Okay, so in order to do that, you can see over on the actually let's have a look at the instruments just to point some things out to you as well. We've got indicated airspeed, so the 6-pack is broadly the same as you normally see. indicated airspeed though is in kilometers per hour, so everything's metric on this aircraft. So this is kilometers per hour, so you're looking at about 250 knots is about 450 kilometers per hour. Our rotate speed is indicated by the blue marker here, and that is about 160 knots, 150 knots. So you just need to be aware of where those markers are. Altitude is in meters. Okay, so I'm going to press B to calibrate the altimeter. It was already fine. And you've got the standby altimeter over here, so that's not been tuned in. So that obviously didn't react to pressing B, but we're going to leave it alone today. We're not going to worry too much about setting things up. We're just going to get a feel for the aeroplane and how it flies. So everything should be up and going by now. It's worth saying as well, there's a really nice tablet and you can obviously load your plans. So let's just go and have a quick look. If we go, and it's got the GNS 430 built into it. Obviously that's not realistic, but they're just giving you something in the sim that is vaguely familiar for you to program a route into. But obviously if you go and program a flight plan into the GPS, you can then pull it from there into here to show your progress. But more interestingly, you can set things up on the ground. You can open the doors, so you can open the main door. So you can open the nose, and the whole nose, it takes about 10 minutes for it to happen. The nose will crank up overhead, and the floor will unfold from internally, and the inside of the body is wonderfully modelled, it has to be said. You can actually go and pre-configure loadouts of what might be inside the aircraft, and entire trains, for example. You can fit some massive hardware in here, but we're going to leave all that alone. I think in the real world the Mriya could carry about 600 tons or more, so it's obviously the heaviest heavy lifting aircraft that's ever been built. It's significantly bigger than the Galaxy. Okay, let's wind the flaps out, take the parking brake off, ease the throttles forwards, and we're going to roll towards the runway. So ground handling is fairly straightforward. So I'm about to run over everything, hopefully they won't complain too much. It's just the scale of it, isn't it? It just dwarfs everything. You have to be very mindful when you're near airport buildings, because obviously the wingspan is so huge. You might think normally you've got lots of room. In this you don't. There's a wonderful video on YouTube actually of a Mriya taxiing out in America somewhere, I think, and somebody filmed it from just outside the fences, and it's stunning to watch. They had to have cars travelling alongside it just to keep an eye on the wingtips, and cars travelling in front of it and behind it, to warn everybody else that it was coming. So at idle it does have positive thrust, so you do need to be mindful once you do get it rolling. Obviously it weighs a lot, so just as it's difficult to get it rolling, it's difficult to stop as well. So just rolling out towards runway 22 at Stansted. Goes a bit uphill here, so I'm just opening the engine slightly. Obviously 6 engines are quite noisy, and that's reflected on when you're inside the cockpit. If we go and jump back in, it's not a quiet cockpit, let's put it that way. So we're going to take off, climb out to 1,000 meters, and then come back, or do a left turn, fly downwind out to about 10 miles out and then come back in. You can see we've got distance measuring equipment switched on, which came on with the radio. It's showing 0 obviously because we are at the apron where we're going to come back to. Let's just line up on the runway and then we'll just go for it. Sounds are fantastic, it has to be said. Okay, so we're watching the indicated airspeed rise. We're using a tiny amount of rudder to keep it straight. We're waiting to get to the blue marker, which is about the equivalent of about 150 knots. Remember, this is in kilometers per hour. We need to keep it below 450, below 10,000 feet. So there we go, we rotate. It's very heavy on the nose, on the rotate. You can see we're drifting, so you have to be careful. Once you get momentum in a direction, it's a so-and-so to get back. So gear up. Come off the throttles. It will accelerate very quickly, so you can notice the speed limit increased as I retracted the flaps. So the clicking you can hear is the elevator trim. If anything, the elevator trim is far too strong, so that might be something they want to work on, the developers I mean. So remember, we need to stay below 450 kilometers per hour. So we'll begin our left turn. So we're going to turn around until we're facing the opposite direction, which is about 42 degrees. We'll be winding the throttle in as we get there. So we're looking at the altimeter here as well. So we're just coming up through 500 meters on our way to 1,000. So I'll lift the nose slightly because we are accelerating. So climbing at 1,000 feet a minute. So we have a look from outside as we do this. It's huge, isn't it? So it's worth saying I'm only at about 70% throttle. I could accelerate uphill quite dramatically if I wanted to. So coming up to 750 meters. ,800 meters. Start coming out of this turn. Climbing at 500 feet a minute. Let's just increase the climb rate a little bit. So I'm actually having to put, as we're gathering speed, I'm having to put in a little bit of nose down trim to stop it from climbing so strongly. So we're now doing the reciprocal. So I'm going to pull the throttles back. We're just coming up to 1,000 meters now. So this is the first time I've done this, by the way, so I apologise if I'm wavering around a little bit and not really following the numbers very accurately. I'm still learning as I go. But it's educational just to see how the plane operates. So it's pretty stable now. So if I jump outside, you get to have a proper look at it in flight. It's a monster, isn't it? Look at the smoke pouring out of the engines. It's a pollution machine. Okay, so we need to keep an eye on that. You could see it turning from the outside view. So the wind, I guess, is pushing it round slightly. If you're wondering about it being all analog instruments, this aircraft was built in the 1980s. It was actually retired from service. It was originally built to carry parts of the Buran, or to carry the Buran rocket, and shuttle, and to carry parts of the Russian rockets. But then it was retired from service for many years, and then in the 2000s it came back into service to carry heavy machinery. There is actually another airframe, so the one existing operational Mriya was destroyed, as we said, but there is another airframe which they are trying to finish, which was about 70% complete before the Russian invasion into Ukraine. Okay, so it's still climbing, so I'm trying to be careful here. So we're keeping an eye on the distance measuring equipment. We can also see the glide slope, so we're just about to come up through the glide slope, which is about where we'd expect that to happen. Look, we're coming up for 8 miles out. So typically at 8 miles out, 2,500 feet is about the same as 1,000 meters above here. So we're in the ballpark, so when we do our U-turn we should be in a good place for the approach. Okay, we're now below the glide slope, so let's go and make our turn back towards the airfield. And we'll try to stay below the glide slope and not dive too much. We're losing quite a lot of lift, so I'm kicking in quite a lot of elevator to pull the nose back up. I'm just mindful that this thing has a lot of momentum and I don't want it to get away from us. So I'm watching the vertical speed, watching the attitude indicator, watching the HSI rotate and watching the altitude. We're going to be flying directly into the sun on the way back, aren't we? That's a bit of bad planning on my part, really. At least it'll look pretty outside, eh? So the HSI is coming in just about right. So we're going to come off the throttle. We're losing height at the moment. We've lost a couple of 100 meters of height where I wasn't keeping an eye on it. But we're pretty much lined up with the runway. So I'm going to put the flaps out. We're going to put the spoilers out to lose some speed, so you can see the indicated airspeed coming off. We're 7 miles out. We're off to the left, so let's go and correct that. And we'll get the gear down now. Remove the spoilers again. So we're back on the centre line. You can actually see the runway just about right in front of us. We're getting too slow. So let's sit up in the cockpit so we can see outside as well. So you can see the glide slope is just come in down here, and we can see the runway now in the mist ahead, or in the twilight ahead of us. So we're just going to keep an eye on the airspeed to stay above that rotate speed or just above it, and try to keep ourselves on the glide slope, on the localizer and on speed. So I'm going full flaps now. So we'll keep an eye on that speed. So that's kicked the nose up a lot. I've just trimmed it too much. Again, that's just practice. As I said, the trim is very, very effective. We're just increasing the throttles a bit more. We're getting slow. We are slightly above the glide slope, so we'll just dip the nose slightly. I want to try and keep the speed around about where the blue marker was for rotation. So we're still high, so I'm going to pull the throttle back, drop the nose gently. We're still high, we're off to the left. don't want stutters now, please, Microsoft Flight Simulator. Pretty much on the money now. So now it's just visual and judgment. Again, first time I've done this, so we'll see how we go. So pull the throttles back, rotate, and we're down. Put the spoilers out, engines into reverse. I have no idea how strongly they are going to react. Yeah, they're not really slowing us down in a hurry, so we're going to go for the wheel brakes as well and come off the reversers. Wheel brakes now, and spoilers off, and we can come off on the high-speed exit. That was actually remarkably placid. I was expecting to have more to do. I guess big heavy plane doesn't get thrown around by much, does it? So flaps up and we can taxi in. That was good fun. But look at the size of it. It's just gigantic, isn't it? Even taxiing takes a bit of practice with it to keep it on the lines. You have to hang that nose out, remembering that the point of rotation is kind of a couple of 100 feet behind the pilots, or 100 feet behind them at least. And there are two nose wheels, it's worth noting. So we're going to have a look down here. But isn't it awesome? What an aeroplane. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed that. And I'll see you again soon. I will be returning to this and we'll have a look at actually doing some proper, flying from one airfield to another and doing some navigation. But before I do that, I really need to learn how it works properly. So today was winging it a little bit, but I think it was good just to see how it behaves. So that's the Antonov AN-225 Mriya in Microsoft Flight Simulator. See you again soon.